Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am here with Nashwa today. This is for the love of classics, so any of you who haven't been here before, I run a channel called For the Love of Classics, and Nashwa here is my friend. She is from Pakistan as well. She has her own booktube channel, and Nashwa, I will let you introduce yourself.
Alright, hey guys, I'm Nashwa. Welcome back to my channel. And today I'm being joined by Risha from The Love of Classics. And this will be the first time that I'm filming a one-on-one collab. So if it's not good or if it's like, if it's not going well, we have Risha here and she will save the day. Because my channel has a very chaotic and a very erratic energy. Risha is the more calm. So she will I'll rely on her to carry us through this video. So if any of you are new to this channel or Risha's channel, let me introduce her by saying that I think it's one of the most informed channels on classics that I've seen from a Pakistani booktuber. And because Pakistani booktubers are somewhat of a rare phenomenon, we don't really see a lot of them. We started interacting, I think, a few months ago, mostly on YouTube, then on Instagram, and then finally enough to feel comfortable around each other to film a video. So we'll talk about a lot of things, and I hope you enjoy this video.
So Nashwa usually talks a lot about nonfiction, and Nashwa, I really appreciate the 1 month long Pakistani readers which you are doing. That's pretty amazing. I thought that was very cool. So it's like if anybody's interested in Pakistani writers or really good nonfiction, then you guys should definitely check out Nashwa's channel because she does an amazing job there. Nashwa, I had a couple of questions I thought we could ask each other out. So we are both from Pakistan, so that's one thing that's common between us. We don't usually read the same books, but we are trying to. She's trying to read more classics, and I'm trying to read more nonfiction and more contemporary fiction as well. So, Nashwa, can you tell me why do you like to read nonfiction, and what's the motivation behind that?
I think one of the things is that nonfiction is one of the few things I read because I've always been one of those readers who reads across the borders, like across the genres. There's not just one specific genre that I read. So I started off reading like everyone else in Pakistan, the books that were available to us. So starting with Harry Potter and things like that. And then slowly, I think as you grow, as you want to evolve, you want to explore more things. And after joining BookTube, I realized that the world of books is a lot bigger than we experienced it. So that sort of grew my interest in other genres. I started reading young adults because I always assumed that it was something that was meant for kids. And then I realized that there's so much more. I started reading more literary fiction. I started reading nonfiction. And the reason behind reading nonfiction was that I started with a memoir, and it's one that is very, very close to me in terms of how much I valued it. And it's this one. It's Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. And I think this is the one that sort of introduced me to the genre. And now I try to read things that interest me across the genre, across different genres, because I feel like reading is not a one-track thing. I'm curious by nature. I like to know a lot of things about things that are happening around the world. So with me, I'm very eclectic, and my latest experiment, as Risha mentioned, is trying to read Pakistani books because I've always had my complaints. And this month, because August is our Independence Month, I thought that I would try vlogging the process of me trying to read like 4 to 5 Pakistani books this month. So the interest basically comes from the fact that I'm just curious and I like to know things, and I read very, very widely.
And I have been meaning to read Born a Crime by Trevor Noah for ages. And every time I go to a bookshop, I look at it and I'm like, I'll buy you next time. Next time but I never do buy it. And now you have made me want to buy it even more because I really want to read nonfiction and I'm so scared. I mean, I am so comfortable reading classics and I'm so scared of picking up a nonfiction. I'm like, ये मुझसे नहीं होगा लेकिन now that I'm listening to you, I think I should definitely try because it's all about like challenging yourself and moving out of your comfort zone. Because I was reading young adult and chick lit and contemporary fiction for so long, and I realized that I was so bored of it. I knew how the story would end. I knew what would happen. I knew the language. I was so comfortable in being in that space, and it took like courage to move away from that. And now that I have, I'm so happy that I've discovered something new and even more brilliant. And I think now nonfiction is going to be, the next step for me.
I feel exactly that way about classics because I'm intimidated by them. Like I studied English literature in school and I know the classics that I've read, but someone who, I always find them hard to get into. I think the language for me is difficult because I'm used to a more contemporary style. So don't be intimidated by them. It's just like picking the nonfiction that you're interested in because a lot of people will recommend very heavy nonfiction to you. And I would just go with the subject that you're interested in because I like Trevor Noah as a person, his personality, and I was like, I want to see what he's about. So that's one of the things that, when people recommend a book to you, like a classic, people are always like, start with Jane Austen. And I wasn't interested in it for the longest time until I was like, maybe I should check it out because my own interest developed in it.
Yeah, I think that's really important that you need to pick up a book you're interested in because people say start with autobiographies and I'm like, I don't want to know about this person. Why should I read about him? And then that's correct. I really like Trevor Noah and I think he's really funny and really smart. So maybe it's a good place that I should start a book he wrote about himself. So yeah, that's a really good idea to start with something like that. So if you had to recommend, like we said, we would recommend one book to each other's followers. So if you had to recommend one book to my followers who are mostly interested in classics, but maybe want to try something new and want to read a non-fiction or a contemporary fiction or something by a Pakistani writer, maybe. So if you had to recommend something, what would you do?
So I'm going to cheat a little and recommend two books because you've given me the option.
Yeah, sure.
But with my nonfiction, I would suggest that if you're interested in memoirs specifically, go with Born a Crime because Trevor Noah is such a universal personality. I feel like everybody knows him, and if you appreciate his humor, like his memoir is very powerful because he grew up in apartheid South Africa. So in the height of racism, when Black people weren't really allowed to interact with white people at all, so he talks about his own culture, his own history, his own country. And I think that's very important because it has shaped his personality and it has given him that perspective which he uses to talk about politics. And from your channel, I feel like Middlemarch is one of your absolute favorite books, and you like it because it talks about human nature and different elements of it. I haven't read it myself, but it's one of those classics that I'm scared of. But based on that recommendation, I would suggest reading Cracking India, or in Pakistan, it's called Ice Candy Man by Bapsi Sidhwa. And if you are on my channel, you guys know that I've been about Bapsi Sidhwa this entire year. I mention her in every video. And I'm on a journey to read all of her books because that was the first time that I thought I felt really, really comfortable with a Pakistani writer who's expressing her identity. She is Parsi by faith. And that's something very interesting too, because most of our writers write from a Muslim point of view. And that sort of gives her the point of neutrality. It makes her very, very neutral in the way that she talks about the politics. And specifically, this book I would recommend because it talks about human nature. It's about the partition of India and Pakistan, but it talks about the different groups of people without banding in all their religious identities together. So if you're from Pakistan, you know that, we don't tolerate anything from India. They don't tolerate anything from us. It's very political in a way. But this one basically puts all humanizes the partition for you because we've been taught the politics of it. So you can see the people behind the religions and what their motives are. So I think it's a very, very powerful book. It's informative and it would maybe satisfy the people who are looking for that kind of thing.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to get it, it's also available on Book Depository. So it's like available everywhere. They have this, not just in Pakistan, it's in publication everywhere. So you can get it easily as well. I'm going to buy that one as well because it really sounds interesting. We have been listening to the partition story since forever, and it's always full of anger and resentment and so much political background behind it that it's very difficult to stay, impartial and neutral to the whole situation. So it's very good that you mentioned this book. I'm definitely be going to check it out, and if you guys are interested, you should check it out as well. If I had to recommend one book to your followers, that would be a classic because that's what I'm sitting here and promoting. But I would like to say that I am going through this journey as well. When I started reading classics, I had only read a couple of them, and that's when I started this channel. So I've been reading them with my followers throughout these years, and it's really fun to. I get recommendations from people because I don't know which classic to choose next, and people recommend that you should try this one next. You like this one because this is the one you liked, so definitely you should check the other one out. So if I had to recommend, for someone who has not read any classic, it is better to start with something a bit easier. So again, I would say Jane Austen, because it's like a kind of a universal story. Everybody has been through similar things in their life. So Pride and Prejudice would be one. If you don't want to go into the, the family drama, the romance side of the classics, then you could try something else. There are sci-fi classics, there are horror mystery classics. So you don't have to read, the romantic side of the classics as well. Those are just easier to assess, I think, and that is why everybody keeps telling new readers to read Charlotte Bronte or Jane Austen, because people usually find them more accessible. But if you don't want to, you don't have to. You could also start with Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. So there's no romance in it. So for anybody who hates that, you can easily go into it. And there is so much of exploration of human nature in it, because Frankenstein everybody has heard about Frankenstein, but the actual book, the story is very different from what we think it is. And there's so much more to Frankenstein than just a monster story. There is exploration of human nature and sympathy, which monsters even can have, even if humans are lacking it. So it's really fun and interesting story. If you want to start, you can start from there. And it's also a very short book. And the language, honestly, is not as hard as Jane Austen's might be. So that's a plus as well. You could also read The Picture of Dorian Gray. I'm going with two books as well. You could also read The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Another short book. And Oscar Wilde's writing is actually very modern. It's not thick and dusty like some of the older authors. And he has short sentences in his books, so even more easier to read. So it's a favorite of many. So you could definitely, check out the summaries of these books. Whichever sounds appealing to you, you could pick it up. So that would be my recommendation.
There you have it. Now we have two recommendations, and I'm very proud to say that I've read both of them. Oscar Wilde back in the day, but Frankenstein more recently. And I agree with you that I think it was easier. And for me, I really like the writing style. I was expecting like a horror where there's people running down the streets and there's a monster. Like, it's nothing like that. And that's something that I appreciated about it.
Yeah, I don't like horror. And when everybody said you should read Frankenstein, I was like, no, thank you. But once I read it, I was like, there's no horror in this story. It's like so simple, and there's nothing scary about that book. So it's not a scary book if you're scared of it, because I like happy endings and all flowery, colorful books. And Frankenstein sounded like something creepy and scary, but it's not that at all. So Nashwa, we're both from Pakistan, and I thought we could just, discuss a bit of the reading and the reading culture in Pakistan, where it stands today, and what we can do to make it better and improve it. If you have any ideas on that.
So I feel like reading has not been a very prevalent culture in Pakistan generally. And I feel like over the time, is when I'm looking at it now, I think it's increasing because I think there's a lot of young people who I'm seeing on Instagram with their Bookstagram accounts and they're reading. So that's slightly encouraging for me to see, or maybe I'm more aware of it. But when I was growing up, it was one of those things that was never considered cool. Like, if you read books, like, you're a nerd, you're all of those things which are associated with people who are not fun. Like, that's the idea of it. And that's something that carried with me through university as well, because I used to have a lot of free time between between classes, especially in the first year or first 2 years, because it wasn't that heavy. So whenever I would be on break and I didn't really know anyone, I would like take out a book and just sit in a corner and read. And I would literally have people tell me that, that's like, you think this is fun? Like, this is not something cool. Yeah. And when I graduated university, like, I saw the same people posting pictures of books on their Facebook pages. And I was like, okay, something has changed. Either it's, you've realized how books are, or the fact that, you just weren't really aware of it before. So for me, it's something that I've always felt like I did on my own, in a way that I didn't know a lot of people who read as much as I do. Because there will be people who read like one odd book a year, and you will find like, things like Mark Manson's books, The Subtle Art, and his self-help books, things that like really soar in popularity because, so for some reason they're very appealing. So when I was growing up, I think there was not much of a reading culture. And even in my family, like, I don't know many of my family members who read. Like, I would push books on people and they would be like, no, it's okay, we'll watch the movie instead. So So I think like it wasn't there, but as I'm seeing it now, I think it's increasing, and even more so, like I'm encouraged because I feel like now I have a platform where people, for some reason, they watch the videos, and for some reason they find it helpful to like also spread awareness, not about Western books, because I've been reading a lot of those all my life, but now I want to give a little bit of like commentary on the Pakistani books which are available to people here, because that's another part of the reading culture in Pakistan, that we have massive bookstores, but for some reason the books are becoming really, really accessible, and somehow if you're a student, it becomes really hard for you to pay for your books yourself. So I wanted to encourage like more Pakistani books, because even if you have to pay for the price for it, you'll probably find them in a library, in your school university library, but you'll also find like cheaper copies there, and it's something that's available to you. So if I'm hyping up a book that I read 3 years ago by a Western author that somehow I acquired the copy of, that's not really helpful to a Pakistani reader who's watching me. So that's why I'm trying to read more Pakistani books, and that's how I'm trying to help in a way that, oh, this is Babsi Sadhwa, I discovered her, and she's like very popular in Pakistan. You'll find her books in every bookstore. So like, why don't you start from there?
Yeah, that's amazing what you're doing, Nashwa. I really, really appreciate it, because I never knew about Bapsi Sadhwa, and I'm from Pakistan and I am a reader. I think I consider myself a reader. I usually know about all the authors and books which are available, but I never heard of her. So it's good to that you're using your platform to maybe promote these writers which are, slowly fading away, or people are not aware of them anymore or forgetting about them, and you're like bringing them back to light. And I agree about you when you said that you were sitting in college and reading, and people said, "Why aren't you doing something better?" And I think I had the same. I went through the same thing. I used to read during my breaks, and people would say, "Maybe you should make a friend." I was like, "Books are my friends." I'm having a good time reading, but I also think that people usually, I'm not going to say about my family, because last time I totally bashed them that they didn't read, and and they came back at me that why did you say this about us? But my sister does read. I'm going to mention it now, but she also reads the popular books. No, the ones which are very hyped up, and she picks it up occasionally and sees what's it all about. So I think there are readers, but the reading culture is not ingrained. I feel like our grandparents used to read a lot, and then there was this other generation which totally forgot about books. And I think now it's changing and it's coming back. And I remember my grandparents usually had a lot of books. They read a lot. And then my parents, for some reason, I don't know, they never read anything. And now I feel like because of the access to the internet and the encouragement one gets from other readers is why maybe the Bookstagram community is coming alive, and all the young people are reading the young adult books which are meant for them. So they are more accessible for them and they are enjoying them. So that's good that these young readers are coming back, and then they can obviously continue this throughout their life and be a part of this reading culture. We both read Jane Austen in the month of July. There was a Jane Austen July readathon going on, and Nashwa read her first Jane Austen book. So I read my last Jane Austen book, and Nashwa read her first one. So Nashwa, how was your experience? You read 3 books. That's amazing. By Jane Austen this month. You read Pride and Prejudice and Emma and Northanger Abbey, if I'm correct.
Yes.
How was it? Did you enjoy
It
yourself?
was very strange because I'm a person, I don't do TBRs. Like I make a TBR and then I'm like, oh, forget about it. I'm a mood reader. I read whatever I want to read in that time. For some reason, something clicked in 2020. We're like, maybe I should try vlogging it. And I've never vlogged before. I look at other people's vlogs and I'm like, I can't do it as well as they can. Like, I don't know where these clips are coming from, especially like self isolation. You're not really going out a lot. So, how
Yeah.
can you possibly make your vlogs interesting? So, I thought that I'll try vlogging it because I feel like vlogging for me gives me an incentive because I have to report back. I have to tell you on a daily basis how much I've read. And that sort of makes me accountable. So something clicked in 2020 where I'm sticking to TBRs and I'm making vlogs. And because I think everyone was just really excited about Jane Austen, and it's an author that I'm very aware of. And I knew the story of Pride and Prejudice even before reading Pride and Prejudice because it's done so many times and so many like Bollywood movies and TV shows that are based on it. But I've never actually read the full book. I remember it was part of my course in maybe class 4 or 5 in like a abridged version.
Mhm.
But my memory has faded, so I was like, let me try. So initially, it was very difficult to get into it because she has a complicated writing style. And I used the audiobook with the help of the physical book just to get used to the language. So Pride and Prejudice, I think, was the best experience for me because I understand why it's so well loved. I understand like why people like it. And I ended up making my mom read it in Urdu because
Yeah, that was
she doesn't.
so cute. I loved her reading Pride and Prejudice. That was so cute.
Yeah. So I gave her an Urdu translation because she doesn't like reading books in English because I feel like then she feels discouraged and it's not the language that she mostly went to school in. So I was like, I'll give it to you in Urdu. Like I think that's one of the things that we try to shame readers for. If you can't read English, you're not a reader, and
Yeah, that's
it's
just
not a very accurate thing. So yeah, I really like Pride and Prejudice. I enjoyed Northanger Abbey a lot because I think it was a mockery of the Gothic genre. And I've read so many Gothic genre because even within classics, like that's the genre that I tend to
that's everybody.
go towards. I like it. I like Rebecca. I love like Wuthering Heights. I know you don't like it, but it's one of those books that I really like. So I enjoyed Northanger Abbey, and Emma was a bit of a hit and a miss for me. Like there were parts of it I really enjoyed, and there were some parts of it where I'm like, I don't understand the characterization, or maybe I'm not smart enough. This is my first Jane Austen, so maybe I need to read it again. So I think overall it went really well for me. I wasn't expecting to read 3 full classic novels in 1 month, but yeah, it went well. It was fun. I was like, our house was getting a makeover entirely, so I was like, I'll vlog that and make it interesting. So it was a really good experience. I really enjoyed all of them. Like some more than others, but definitely like all of them.
What about Pride and Prejudice? How did you like that one?
I really liked it because I feel like it's one of those books that is extremely relevant even today. And this is something that my mother also mentioned when I was trying to like interview her about her feelings, that the problems are so relevant today, especially if you're living in a South Asian culture like Pakistan, India, or I can even say Bangladesh. Like marriage is the center of a woman's life, and unless you're planning to get married, or even, like that's something that our whole society evolves around. It's seen the point where if you're not married, you're not successful. Like that's just how women are seen in this culture, which is again extremely inaccurate, but it's something that's very prevalent and something that Jane Austen also highlights in her books. So I definitely enjoyed that aspect of it. To see that how all of these ideas, which are 18th century ideas, but they're still very relevant today, especially in cultures like ours.
Yeah, totally. So I agree with you. I actually wasn't a huge fan of Emma. I thought it was the longest of her works and it got a bit boring because of its length, I think. And also, I did not like the character of Emma. I know she learns to be good by the end of it, but I thought I couldn't relate to her at all. I didn't understand her. Why was she the way she was? And after reading Mansfield Park, which was my last Jane Austen book, I really connected with the character of Fanny Price. I really liked her. She was very quiet and very humble, and she was smart, but she didn't boast of it. And she just stood in the background and let everybody do their thing and just observed. And I thought she was the more stronger for it. So I really liked her character more, and then, but it's not my favorite Jane Austen. I would say my favorite is Pride and Prejudice and Persuasion. I'm biased. I'm not sure. I can't pick one of those two, but I really like those two because the story in both of those books is amazing, and plus the writing in them both is like so beautiful. And I feel like every time I reread Persuasion and Pride and Prejudice, I just find something new and something new in the language and the style of writing, which just amazes me even more. So I think that Emma is just overrated. Everybody says Emma is their favorite book, but I don't see it. I think that her other works are way better. I really like Pride and Prejudice and Persuasion. When I read Northanger Abbey, I think I've forgotten almost all of it. I don't recall much from that book, but again, that book was about mockery of the Gothic genre, and I don't usually like Gothic genres. She was making fun of them, and I was making fun of them, and I was like really happy with that part of it. But other than that, I don't remember much of it. Maybe I should reread it again sometime. But I had a really good time. I read another author, which was the Jane Austen's contemporary. The challenge was to read a book by a Jane Austen's contemporary. Yeah, that was called Marriage, and the book was called Marriage. And so that was basically the theme. And that's kind of the theme that goes on in Jane Austen's book as well. And I realized that's so common to what goes through, goes on in our houses in Pakistan. I mean, somebody is either getting married or is looking for a proposal, or is not married, and everybody's after them to get married. So everything revolves around this concept of settling down, and marriage is seen as a thing which you need to do in order to move on to the next step. And it's not like somebody asked me the other day that how did you meet your husband, and I was like, this was an arranged marriage. And it was very new for many of my subscribers. They were like, what, you got arranged marriage? And that's very common in Pakistan, but it's not something very common in maybe the European countries today. But it was very common when you go back a couple of 100 years back, because Jane Austen is talking about it. Women are getting married for, very monetary reasons and not just love. And if they were getting married for love, they were either making a very wrong decision, or maybe there's a small chance that finally finding the right person for themselves. So that's thing which is very common between these two very different time zones and very different cultures, Pakistan and maybe the 18th century Europe. But I think that's the common ground which makes us appreciate these books.
So let me ask you the question of the century. Is it Mr. Darcy or Mr. Knightley?
Oh, it's definitely Mr. Darcy. It's not Mr. Knightley at all.
I think so too. I found the character of Knightley very strange, to be honest, because he's supposed to be mid-30s and he's not acting mid-30s. And I'm like, for someone even in that time, you're acting a little bit like someone who's a little too angry and a little jealous
at times.
Yeah, and then even his development in character was great, because I saw his kindness and how evolved he was. But still, I was like, you did some things I can't forgive.
Yeah, he was very bossy. I think he was very bossy towards Emma. I mean, I know Emma was doing wrong, but he was being kind of rude to her at times, and I didn't like it.
Yeah, and then this is something that was constantly in my mind. Like, she's 21 years old. She's very young in the book. Yeah, and then he's 16 years older than her. And I'm like, how are you? I was just wondering the whole time. I was like, how is this going to work out? Because I need this to work out. I know it will. They'll get married in the end. But I want to see the development. And I honestly wasn't satisfied with Emma as much. But you mentioned Persuasion, and I read it last year, and it went over my head. Because it was my very, very first Jane Austen book. And I think I started with the wrong one. I should not have started with Persuasion. So I need to reread that. And now I'm interested in Mansfield Park too, because that's the one that I don't have. And everyone tells me that it's the worst one. It's the most boring one.
It was the worst one. And I think that is because we don't see the maybe the courtship scenes in Mansfield Park. There's no courtship scene in Mansfield Park. So maybe that's why it's not as popular, because there are a lot of scenes between Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth Bennet in Pride and Prejudice, which are, the popular scenes from the book, but there are no such scenes in Mansfield Park. And maybe that's why everybody just puts it to the back. But I did not like the main hero of the book as well. I think Mr. Darcy has just done that for me, and there's not going to be any other guy.
There'll never be another.
Yeah, there's never going to be another Mr. Darcy. But Edward, the main character from Mansfield Park, wasn't very, the best guy. But Fanny Price was a good person, and I really liked her character. She was in such a bad situation, and she made the best of it. So that really made her shine more. When it comes,
I think that's something that a lot of Pakistani girls would probably be able to relate to, because I haven't read the book, but there's a lot of things that you can't control around your life.
Exactly.
And if you're a lot of decisions are being made on your behalf by your family in most cases. So I think that's something that I'm interested in now. Yeah. Because now I see it from a different perspective. I think I'll give it a go. Not this month, but sometime this year, hopefully.
Yeah, we have saturated ourselves with Jane Austen for a while. We need to.
Yeah, for a while. Because I also watched a lot of adaptations. I watched the BBC Pride and Prejudice. I watched the BBC Emma, and I watched the Austen. So I think I overdosed a little. I was like, this is getting a little out of hand. But I liked Emma more than the book, the BBC adaptation. I think it was condensed. It was concise. I liked it a lot more.
I wish there was a better film of Persuasion, because the ones which are, there are two film adaptations and they are both like the BBC adaptations. There's no big major production of Persuasion, and I think there never will be. There was a meme on Instagram that there's never going to be a film adaptation, proper one for Persuasion, and that made me sad. But I think there needs to be one which better represents the book, because they always make the main characters so different from what I thought they would be after reading the book, and the ones in the film are just so different. But I think it's the story of a lost love. So they fall in love, and then they come back to each other and get a reconciliation, and that was a very sweet thing about that book, which I liked. And then throughout that book, the heroine, what's her name?
Anne Elliot.
Elliot, yeah. Anne Elliot.
Memory.
Yeah. Anne Elliot stays, a very calm and patient throughout those 8 years of separation. And, she listens to everyone in the beginning, but then she doesn't get angry at them, even though she has, lost something which was very important to her. And then at the end, she finally, makes her own mind and makes her own decision. And that's really, I think she was very courageous in that way.
Now I want to reread it, but like not in 2020 at least, because I think I started with the wrong one for sure.
Yeah, maybe it's. I think I read Persuasion once when I was very young, and then I don't even remember it at all. And then I reread it in class 8th or 9th, and maybe then I started to realize that okay, I like it. And then the same thing happened with Pride and Prejudice as well, because it took me a while to get into the language. I was very young, so I didn't understand many parts of that book at that time. I think that's all we wanted to discuss. We wanted to discuss Jane Austen and some of our general reading experiences. If you guys liked this collaboration between me and Nashwa, let us know. We would love to do more. If you guys are, enjoying this, yeah, if you are interested, we would love to make more, because we had a lot of fun. We got to know each other better after our first call together, and even now I feel like I'm more friends with Nashwa than ever. I think that's it. We should.
Yeah, I think so. I think the first call that Risha mentioned was us trying to figure out how to record a video on Zoom, and it took us 35 minutes, I would say, to figure out how we can possibly record at the same time. So I would just like to thank you, Risha, for because she reached out to me. She's like, "Do you want to do a video together? I think it would be a good idea." And I was like, "I think that's a brilliant idea, because that would be fun." But also, like, if you guys aren't subscribed to her, I'll leave her description and everything, all the links.
Mm-hmm. I'll link Nashwa's channel down below. You should definitely check her out. You're not going to be disappointed.
Yeah, so we will promote each other shamelessly. Our content, we'll talk about each other, because it's not something that I'm going to flatter, because that's not my personality. If I genuinely enjoy a book or a content, or then I talk about it, because if I don't like it, then I'm like, and usually I don't talk about booktubers unless I like them, because I don't want to focus on the negative. But I think like it's a very valuable channel, because it's one of the most comprehensive channels on classics you will find. Like, I'm hearing about all these classics that I've never heard of. So I think that it won't be a waste of your time if you go and subscribe to Risha, because her vlogs are really calm and really fun to watch, and something that you definitely will enjoy watching.
Thank you so much, Nashwa. Okay, guys, so we'll link all the details down below, and I think we are going to end it here. We'll see you all in our next videos then. Bye.
Bye.